Hello guys, Carmain here, and welcome to my attempt, at least, to create a video tutorial for colorizing Hearts for portraits in the Kaiserreich style. Now, if you don't know who I am, probably don't, but I am currently the head of art for Kaiserreich. I'm also a developer for Krieg and have done other bits and pieces elsewhere, so I think I hopefully know what I'm going on about, and today I'm going to be taking you through not really source preparation, but how to turn what you see here, a lovely picture of Wendell Willkie, the 1940 Republican president nominee, and turn it into a portrait that we can put in Kaiserreich. So I'm not going to go through source preparation too much here because it's a bit boring, and it depends on the sources. If you've got a very low quality source and you need to do a lot of work, if you've got a very high quality source and you still got to do work. But obviously, your basic rules of thumb are to find a source that is high quality, where the subject is looking at the camera, or looking at least near the camera. It's fairly clearly lit, there's not too many areas of shadow, and there's no overexposure. Now, you can sort out overexposure by, well, there's a few different methods. I'm not going to show them here. This is just about the actual colorizing itself. But you could, say, make a separate layer, copy parts of the skin that are darker, copy over the lighter areas, and then reduce the opacity to bring that down. You can also go into adjustments here, go into levels, go into auto contrast to, if it's quite a flat picture, and you can also select the head itself, then go into auto contrast to bring the head out a bit. I've already done the preparations for the source here, so that's not really a problem. And you'll notice that I've already rotated the source, so he's facing upwards. Now, I am slightly concerned that there's not enough body here, but that was because I had to crop out a watermark, which is not the end of the world. Because it's a simple suit, we can just essentially extend the tie and extend the suit if needed when cropping later. But he is ready to go, and I guess I will join you in HOI4. So, HOI4, it's a website online where you can essentially take select the colour from colorized source and transfer it to a black and white source. Now, can't remember why we do this, or who started doing this, but it's essentially a lot of when you're making portraits is about doing something that you know works and something that you're comfortable with, and this is the way I have learnt and I'm comfortable with creating skin tones. So as you can see, we've already selected the source here, the generic white guy, who many of you may be familiar with, maybe may not be. But now we need to actually apply the colour to here. So two things I'm going to do here. I'm going to reduce the hardness of the brush, and I'm going to increase the size of the brush to probably maximum to start with, and just clicking around here, around the hairline, so it's not too hard. You don't want it to just be a hard line, because that's not really how hair works. It's kind of a slight gradient on pictures. And obviously we're going to colour in all the face, and the area you're going to leave blank is the eyebrows, the hair, and the eyes themselves. I know some people like to colorise the eyes. I don't. I just add colour to the eyes after the fact. But yeah, the reason I'm not going through how to create a source is because it just takes too long. You could probably make a whole series of videos on how to restore poor images with Rimini and how to make your images look right. As long as you have a high quality source that is clearly lit and has a decent amount of contrast, isn't too bright, isn't too dark, then you should be fine. Though I will say that for new people make portraits, you will almost always make your sources too light and too pale. So go a bit darker than you think to start with, if you're just trying to start out from scratch. And you should get something that looks a little bit more lifelike, because often what happens is people overestimate how pale someone is, and then they look dead, because the colour zones on the face aren't really visible. The skin colour itself isn't really visible. They just look very, very pale and pink and almost albino, which is, something that's how my first portraits looked. But that part is about making sure your source is dark enough to actually bring out the colour. And now we have quite quickly colorized the skin tone here. It's not that complicated. On some portraits, if they're wearing like glasses, you won't want to colorize in the glasses, so you have to go around the frames and that kind of thing. But because I've picked a fairly high quality source for this tutorial, then haven't made it too hard on myself. It was just a case of doing the skin. So now we're going to take this and go back to Photoshop. So we are back in Photoshop, and that is where the real fun begins. This is where the actual colorization of the source will happen. I do it in Photoshop because I know the software very well. You can do it in GIMP. I know some people do it in GIMP and other like Photopea, but I think Photoshop is probably the best one, though you do have to pay for it. Wink. But yeah, I'm sure you can find it somewhere if you don't want to pay for it. So, first things first we're going to do is reduce the hue, change the hue and saturation to actually make it skin color, because right now he's very, very red. So for various different skin tones, you'll basically have set values for this. I'm not as good at making portraits of people of Asians or African skin tones. I'm best with making white and Hispanic. So Hispanic is a little bit more yellow and a little bit more saturated, I think. But for this, we're going to make the hue 10, change it up by 10, and reduce the saturation by 15. Everyone will have a different value for that, but that is the one that I know and I'm comfortable with. And now we're going to also make use of a lot of colour masks. These are just, you click the button down here, you go to solid colour, and you have colour. This is very useful because it means that you can colorize an area and then change the colour after the fact if you're not too happy with it. If you just make a brush and select the colour down the swatch and draw on it, you can't really change the colour as easy. You have to go into hue and saturation. It's not very precise. Then again, I'm not very precise with this. You don't have to be. I don't really have any set values for the colour zones I create, but I'll explain colour zones once we've done the basic stuff. So first, I'm going to do the eyes. And just a pale skin tone because I've already got selected. If you need to select one, just go from like somewhere paler on the face, but not too white. You don't do ridiculous. Invert the color mask. Select your brush. You want 0% hardness for anything on the face, and we just go in and we do the. Make sure it's set to white so it can actually be visible, and then Just do the whites of the eyes. This is whites on old Wendell's eyes here. Very, very subtle, but they are there. And then we will set this to a soft light, maintaining 100% opacity. And now we will do the hair. So the hair on most people is a shade of brown. You don't want to go too. It's very easy if you're making someone blonde to make it more too greenish. So always err on the side of too brown than too green or too red, because people's hair isn't actually as wacky and amazing as you might think it is, because it's natural hair colours tend to be what you do. If it's someone who had dyed hair, then go wild. And if you're just making a troll portrait, then again, go wild. But if you're trying to make something look fairly realistic, then you want a fairly not too saturated. This might be too saturated as is. You want a not too saturated image. You don't want it to be completely grey, because everything has colour in it. Do not forget that. Everything you do, everything you do, from a white shirt to a black suit, everything will have some element of colour. And I do an overlay here, and we can see that it is it's a bit too dark and a bit too colourful, so we're just going to reduce that a little bit. I think that's reasonable. And then we're going to do the suit, because the suit is 3, maybe 4 colour zones. I'm going to do 3, but you could technically make the zigzag pattern on the tie 1 colour and the dark bit on the tie 1 colour. Here you don't want it to be too kind of crazy colour-wise. Often in the 30s and 40s people would wear kind of brown colour suits, so they might have more of a different mixture of colours, but you do want, when you're doing clothing and hats and that kind of thing, to increase the hardness to 50%, so it's less, as you can see, there is less bleed off, so your colours aren't going to just bleed off into the other parts of the clothes. So you won't have, if you're giving a blue shirt and wanting a brown suit, you won't have a weird bluey browny bit around the edges where it bled out. If you do, just Control-Z it, or because it's a colour zone, you can go back after the fact, and essentially if you switch the colour around, just do that. You can remove it. That's another reason why colour masks are the best thing since sliced bread. I'm going to reduce the size a little bit just so I can get the area around here a little bit closer to the face without actually going into the face too much. This is going well. Third time's the charm, third time is the charm. So that is the suit, and then we'll just... Okay, so for dark colours, you want it to be hard light. For light colours, you want it to be overlay. You can't notice it on a light bit. If we colorise a bit of the shirt here, you'll notice that looks fine there. Make it hard light. Oh no, that's less fine. So that's why you want to have hard light on dark areas, because it makes it so it's darker, and overlay on light or very colourful areas, because then it won't drown out the light parts of the colour spectrum. For the shirt, I'm actually going to make it slightly blue, but you don't want it to be very blue at all, just very slightly blue. Something that I tend to make something that contrasts with the suit colour. It's not really that's just how I like to make it, so it pops a bit more. It's, again, personal preference. Almost everything you will find over time that you develop your own kind of likes, your own dislikes here on this. And one thing you need to be careful of is taking everyone's suggestion at face value, because everyone has their own opinions. They're like arseholes, everyone has one, and they usually shit comes out of them. There will be some suggestions that are useful, but you don't want to just try and find your own way as best you can. Obviously, some things like the framing of an image, the how bright it is, those kind of things are fairly ubiquitous, but things like, I feel like the colour zone of the blue should be here, or you should make the tie a bit darker, or that kind of thing. If you have like colour references for someone, so a painting or something like that, you can see what kind of clothes they actually wore, and that's often the best thing, because then you can emulate that. As you can see with that, but that's too bright, because I like the shirts to be a bit darker, so I'm going to make it a little bit lighter. That's the power of a colour mask. You can change it after the fact to make it look a little bit better. And the tie colour here, I'm going to go over red. It's very, very generic. I'm going to go over bright red. You'll see why in a minute. Tie colour being red is very generic, but, you know, it's just, there's red, there's blue, kind of golden ties, and there's kind of greyish ties without much colour at all. You might also have brown ties, they're a little bit less common. Tie colours, again, just don't go too overboard if it's something from like the 1930s, and we just set it to overlay, and you can see it pops quite nicely. There is also colour, but yeah, that is a little bit too bright. But if you're making something that's gold, what you want to do is make a colour, pick a kind of golden colour, make sure it's below 50 on the B value there. And what colour does is it gives it a little bit more brightness. And actually, that looks quite nice. Do I keep the gold tie? No, fuck it, I'm going to keep the gold tie. I wasn't thinking I was going to make it gold, but it doesn't really matter that much. So that is the basics done. So technically, it's not colorized, but it has colour, and you could crop it out and serve it up. But what it is lacking is colour zones, the blue bits, the reddish bits, the yellowy bits on the face. And colour zones are a bit of an arcane art. Everyone has their own kind of ways they do them. Some people make it very complicated, some people make it fairly simple. I'm one of the more complicated people. Just how I've learned. You don't have to be as complicated as me, but, you know, just start with this and then change as you get better. So I have this image here. This is an image from a very long time ago that kind of shows where the different colours are on someone's face. So you have kind of red around the nose and the cheeks, but kind of toward, not on the cheeks, just kind of on the periphery of the face and on the nose. You have blue around the mouth and under the eyes, yellow on the forehead and like little parts around the mouth, and also kind of on the bridge of the nose, and then kind of an intermediate colour on the actual cheeks themselves. And also the lips are pink, but that should be fairly obvious. This is kind of how... This is a good way to start, just kind of emulate this, but you don't use these exact colours. They're just, you know, this zone is this zone is that, and you can go from there. So what we're going to start with is the blue, and this is the one where I do actually have predetermined gradient maps. You don't really have to use them. You can just use a flat blue that's kind of dark and saturated, but I've had these for like 2 years and I'm not going to change them because they work. That's another thing. And we're going to use, for most of the colour zones, we're going to use these spatter brushes, because Let's use a bigger one, because they have already got a little bit of randomness into them, so it's not going to be as perfect as, say, a smooth brush. Again, that's more personal preference on my front. That's just how I do it. You could probably use a normal brush and it wouldn't make much of a difference, but that's art, I guess. Everyone has their own tricks of the trade. So we're just going to do that. And what I'll do is I'll leave areas here and here not coloured and make them a different colour later, because the blue area here really is the areas where there's facial hair and that kind of thing. And here, people can be a bit more patchy there, and I tend to make those bits yellow. And also you want a bit of bleed out into the jawline, but not too much, just keep it around the mouth mainly. And you can use the, nasal folds in the mouth? Around the mouth? These bits, if you want a hard line to go up to there and there. And then we're going to feather this to... something that's a bit too much. This is always just eyeballing it. So that went like that. That looks good. Set soft light, and we'll make this 15%. See, it's not a huge difference. Each of these individually aren't a huge difference, but they add up to make him look a lot more lifelike. And I haven't actually done the eyes. Shit. Yes, this isn't scripted. I'm just doing it on the fly now. I'm not 100% sure what his eye colour is. It looks quite light. But bear in mind that only about 15% of people have blue eyes. But because blue eyes look better and, doesn't really matter that much, I'm going to give him blue eyes. If he hasn't got blue eyes, I can just change that later on because it's a colour mask and I can just go hey, let's undo that, let's make it brown, let's make it green, let's make it whatever he actually had. But for now, just blue eyes. Overlay again. Nothing too saturated here. You don't want anything past this, because eyes, unless you're in Dune, do not look like that. They look more like that. And we'll just put you with the whites of the eyes. Now, it is time to do the under the eye parts, the eye bags, and I use a slightly darker blue colour here. Again, you will probably never notice it, but it makes me feel better about what I'm doing. And what I do is I just make a triangle around here where the eyes are the darkest up. I don't know the terminology, I'm not a biologist. But then I will do around the eye there, a bit around here, a bit around here, and then get a larger brush and just kind of mark it around like that. So essentially it's darkest are on the edges, and around the middle it's a little bit lighter, and then something like that. Something like that looks good. These I'll use overlay on maybe 15, maybe 20. 15 will do. You don't want to go too... It's very easy to go too far on the blue colour zones, so don't do that. Just always err on the side of caution. If you can always increase them later on. And now we're going to do the what it said on here as the blush. The blush, which for me, I will use the same skin tone kind of swatch I've got. Just drop it down and make it more saturated, and again aim for about 50, so in the middle. 50 on the B value. I don't know what the B value stands for, but it's just a good rule of thumb. Start on the nose itself, brush out, down and around to about this area. Again on the other side, because it's a little bit less, you'll do it like that. And then also in the middle of the ears, because the ears have a bit of gradient to them too, and we want that to be nice and feathered out so it's nice and smooth. Soft light 20%. And you'll see a lot of 20% from here on. Then red parts. Red, similar again, a little bit less saturated, but there is going to be quite a lot of red. So you do that to red, you do that to red, there to red, bit in the neck to red, back up there to red, and also up above the nose. Now this isn't on that one, but it's something you can change them if you observe people and think oh, there's actually a bit more colour there. It's a bit more of a reddish above the nose on the forehead, because the forehead isn't just one blanket bar of yellow. The forehead has its own. I mean, everyone's slightly different, but Yeah, so that's that, and you can also do a little bit of red around the top of the eyes as well, though it's not really that important. And again, similar, like 20 pixels. You want it to be quite cloudy and smooth. And notice here, I've slightly fucked up, so we can just go in and erase that. Or crash Photoshop. What have I done here? Oh no, have I broken it? No, it seems to be... Okay, no, we're... Oh, my computer's struggling. Right. We're good, I think. Again, soft light and 20%. And already you can start to see that there's some colour. There's some colour coming to these cheeks. There's some colour here and there and everywhere. And then we'll go to the nose. The nose is red, but it's a much richer red. But it is only just, it's only just kind of the tip, like there. Again, make it blurred, but not as blurred, it's like half as blurred, just so it's smooth. And then 20 again. The end of people's noses are redder. And then we want to do the lips. Now the lips, I always go for a kind of slight pinkish colour. I know people go more reddish, but I feel like they can almost look orangey. The way I do it, yeah, you have lips, yeah, they might look a little bit too much, but you just draw around them. You don't need to feather at all here. You just do overlay, and then again 20%. It's nothing major, but it gives them that colour that there are lips here. And the hard edge, because lips do actually have quite a hard edge, not completely hard, but they do have a bit of a hard edge, so that's fairly realistic. And now I've actually done with the reddish parts. Now we're on to the yellowy parts of the face. Now there will be two colour zones. This one is kind of a very bright yellow, and this will go in a few places. The first part is a large part of the upper nose bridge, where you might wear glasses. Almost do it a little bit further down than that. Again, this will be feathered out, so it can look a little bit silly. Then it'll be under the nose, where it's essentially shading that part of the face so it gets less light. In here, and also down here, and then also on around the cheekbones. And we'll feather that not too much, like similar amount as was the nose one, and we'll make that about 15. Nothing, again, it's very small things, but they tend to add up. Well, actually, I'll go more like 20. I'll make that a little bit stronger there. Nose, cheekbone ones, we can probably just expand them a little bit. We can vaguely see them. And then finally, on this, we have a darker orangey yellow. You always want to go on the orangey side, because skin is not green, believe it or not. It's various shades of red. Just go around the hairline and kind of just the top half of the forehead there. Make this nice and set like 20, soft light, 10%. And that is the face. That's the colour actually done. But now it is time to do the other parts of cropping it and making it into an actual portrait. And for this, we're going to need paint.net, another editor, because the way that paint.net has to resize images and make them smaller works better than Photoshop's. At least that's what the general consensus is, and I think it's slightly better too, so we go with it. Less compression, everything's a bit sharper and a little bit clearer. And you'll notice that his face is very smooth, because I already used reduced noise. You always, not here, but on the face itself. Reduced noise is pretty cool, because it reduces the noisy parts, but because I've already actually done it on this picture, you don't need to do it again. These are the settings you'll want to do in case it's a little bit pixely, a little bit sharp. But this, it just smooths everything out and means it's less, like the detail's a little bit clearer. Like might have a little bit of pixelation around here, but it smooths it out a little bit more and that kind of thing. So that's good. So now I'm going to frame it, and to frame it, we're going to get a picture that you've already done earlier, because I'm lazy. Let's go with old Happy Chandler here, and he's quite zoomed out, so we probably may run into problems with this suit, but we'll see. So this picture is the picture you already like for framing of wise. You can just take it, zoom out, and you want to try and make it so the hair links up, the jawline roughly links up, and yeah, we have run out of space a bit here, but that's not the end of the world. You can see there, it's slightly more zoomed in this one, but it's overall it's alright. And it has actually synced up with the bottom of the image, so that's fine. It means we don't have too many problems here. Yeah, so now if we look at this, it's a little bit blurry. We're going to select this, select it from the corner, precisely from the corner, drag it down all the way down to the bottom. Fuck off. Hello. And now, because we're here, we can quickly fix up these areas here by just essentially clone stamping to extend it. Use the clone stamp tool and just go to town a bit. A small one there. The tie here is going to be a little bit harder to do, but not the absolute end of the world. It might be. I'm struggling here. Do that, and then that to there, and then I guess like fuck me, right? This is a bit of a struggle because of the pattern here. You don't want it to be too, not to overlap too much, but again, we can edit. We can make this look a little bit better in a minute. Just clone stamping, make tie look vaguely tie-like. This is actually coming out quite terribly, but it's not the end of the world. Because what we can do is get a smaller one again and just fix up the various imperfections that I've introduced, because I'm terrible. There. We want this to maintain the pattern there and there. Over here, we just want it to fill in. Well, we'll get there eventually. Might take a while, but we will get there, I promise. And there you go. That's acceptable. And also want to make it so the suit kind of continues down here, which is a little bit difficult actually. That'll do. And also you want to make sure that the colours extend all the way as well. Woo, unedited goodness. I could cut this out, but I'm not going to because I hate you all. You just make sure that's got the colour, and you make sure you've got the colour. We're good to go. So now take the highest colour fill, so that yellow, layer, merge visible, control, and paste into paint.net. You'll see picture. But wait, there's more. Image, resize, super sampling, maintain aspect ratio 156 by 210. That is why I use portraits I've already done to frame it, because then I don't have the problem of having to make it fit. Never really understood how people kind of just frame on the fly. And there he is, nice and small, nice and ready to go. Looking dapper there. And I'm also going to save this as because I always tend to save all of my work in progress images just in case. Now we're going to make a separate image. There he is, looking lovely. We're going to get the background image, which is just generally available. I may have it in the description. I don't know if I'm going to add stuff to the description. We'll see. Yeah, we'll just put it behind, do a layer mask, because I don't want to actually impact the image yet. Use 10 at 65% to begin with. And just draw. Just paint around the edge. Do the background, do the suit. you can see it's slightly out of focus here, so it's going to make a slight problem. We can always sharpen up later. I'll show you how I kind of reduce those problems in a bit. And we'll just go around the head. The hair, you want to try and go around while preserving as much detail as you can. Oh, my throat's getting a bit dry. I've been speaking for too long. Oh well, there's not too much left here. Go ahead. This area is a bit of a mess, but you can kind of see that hair actually stops there, and this is all just mess around it, which we can bring back later on when we're in the final smudge stage. When we're smudging the edge of the hair and other parts. Now we've done the kind of big areas, we can go in with a smaller 5 pixel 0% hardness brush and just get the rest of it. So the remainder of the hair there, the edge of the ears, the area surrounding the face. Well, it's be fairly like a sharp line, and what we can actually do to make it a sharper line is that, and then just that, because we're using a layer mask, so we can fuck around like that. Want to reduce the amount of like outline you get, but you will remove it later on. So if there's a little bit, that's fine. Essentially, it's just bleed over from the image itself. Go around the ears, and we will finish off by going around that part of the hair. So now we have something that's actually cropped out, but we can improve that cropping with the power of the smudge tool at a fairly small size and a fairly high strength. And if you want to, you can duplicate the image here, but I'm not going to because we die like men. And we're just going to smooth outwards underneath the layer mask. Now obviously, if you remove the layer mask, this will now look weird, but because we already have the image here, we can always get it back. But you just go and you just do this to reduce the amount of, I don't know, the amount of like dark or light areas outside. It just makes so the colour actually goes to the edge. Other people, what I've seen people do is they go out and they copy this layer that they've made and they do a Gaussian blur, but I don't really like how that looks. I always feel like it gives it a bit of an outline. I don't like my portrait to have an outline. I like it to be a fairly clean cut-off, and that's looking fairly decent. We'll also notice it's gone a little bit pixely around the face, so we're going to use a 15 pixel 5% brush, and we're just going to wiggle around a bit. I'm going to try and preserve these spots here, so I'm not going to wiggle around over those. You'll want to go along where wrinkles are, so you don't actually get rid of them, but at the same time you're just trying to get rid of the various bits of pixelated imperfections here. The nose, you want to smoothen up. The eye bags I tend to just leave because they're nice and detailed. Do a little bit around the face, not too much. The suit itself looks fairly alright. The suit can be a bit more pixely. You can also do it on the hair a little bit, but the hair is nice detail, so I don't want to impact that. Next, we're going to use a sharpening tool, 20% strength, 5 or 10 px. I'm going to go with 10. This is just to bring out a couple of the wrinkles a little bit more. There and there. I want to do it around the mouth as well, around these spots a little bit. And I'm also going to do it on the tie, just to make the tie a little bit sharper, a little bit clearer. And then we are going to get a solid white mask, tiny little brush. And if we look at the image, we can see the eye glint is there and there, so we'll replicate that. See, it's slightly lighter here, so eye glint there, eye glint there. About 30 pixel, 30 opacity. Actually, I might go 40. 30 is normal. 40 is a little bit high, but it seems to work for this one. Gives it a little bit of glint. I tend to be known for having very strong glint on my portraits, which I don't think is a terrible thing. It's just something of my style. Is that alright, or is that slightly too much? I think that's okay. Although I feel like moving over by one might look a little bit better. So it's a little bit more consistent with the eyes, even if it doesn't match the picture, not the picture you had here, but it's slightly different. It just makes it look a little bit better in this, and you can see he's looking fairly sharp. But there is one thing left to do, and that, after we merge visible and get a separate layer again, is the smudge of the hair. This is something that can be quite difficult to get right, so bear with me here. Small brush, 3 pixels wide, 50% strength. Take a look at the hair and see how it goes. So we've got some hair, it's coming out over and around there, up there, a little bit coming over here, some coming around the crown, coming out the crown there, going in a kind of wavy pattern here, but it's fairly, it's not too out of this world. So what we can do is we can emulate that. So we're going to emulate, I guess, the hair over here first. So we're going to brush inwards. And this is the most time-consuming part of the entire picture, really. It's all about just trying to slightly exaggerate, but trying to make the hair not one continually smooth thing. So here we can do that, and we can just bring out a little bit there, a little bit there. And it won't look completely like it did, but it will look kind of semi-realistic. It'll look slightly like overdone. This tends to be how mine looks, but yeah, I'm not an expert at this by any means. I think Rylock and Johnny BL are much better at smudging hair. But I'm okay at it, so I can show you how to do it. So you just go into it. One trick you want to do is you don't want it to be straight. You want to kind of follow an oval shape. So up here, we're not going to pull straight out. No, we're going to kind of oval shape everything. Everything should be a curve. Nothing is, even straight hair isn't perfectly straight. And see, he's already looking like he has some actual hair there, not just blocky shit. I notice there's a bit here, so we can kind of bring that out by just like a little bit of smudge at the back here, just to do that. Maybe try and sharpen up a little bit by smudging in from the background, and that's okay. It's not amazing. It's actually, yeah, this is a lot of this is just smudge around. If it looks good, you continue. If it doesn't look good, you just go back and do a bit more. You just keep going with this, really. It's not rocket science, but it is a knack. And you can keep referring back to your original picture to see how the hair should be travelling. So here, we have a lot of hair that should be doing that. And because we want to make it a little bit exaggerated, we'll just bring half those strands out a little bit. This hair strand we can actually bring out like that. And we have the crown. The crown is a little bit of a problem, really, but we can replicate that just with a few. We don't want to go too overboard, but we just have a bit like that. Bit there. It's going to be a lot less complicated than it looked on the real one because, well, you don't want to be too distracting, but some of this looks fairly decent, I'd say. Let's check it in the actual 100 pixel, 100% zoom, and yeah, that's all right. We can actually go a little bit more with a couple of these. Yeah, I'd say it looks all right. And then we can also do a little bit of the same on parts of the hair here, though we don't really need to on him. He's not really got recede. He's got fairly strong hairline, so you don't really need to smudge out the hair, though over here I will, just to make it look a little bit cleaner. Something like that, and also over here just to give a little bit more detail, just do that and that and that. And there, that's looking good. We can also do it on the eyebrows here. He actually has kind of bushy eyebrows. It's not ridiculous, but there's definitely some room for some smudge there, but nothing too crazy here because the hair on eyebrows is fairly short, so you don't want to go overboard here. And that is done, actually. The smudges have fallen apart, and now we have Wendell Wilkie in all of his glory, and he's looking pretty dapper, I'd have to say. And what this can now be done is put straight into Kaiserreich, and yeah, that is how to make a Kaiserreich portrait. I have no idea how long this video is going to be. It's probably going to be about an hour long because I'm a rambling fuck and also I take ages doing this. Hopefully you haven't lost interest in how you do it and how boring my voice is, but yeah, that's it. It's not actually that complicated, it's just doing it over and over, iterating on your designs to kind of get the hang of how you're meant to do it. Practice makes perfect on this, so you make one, doesn't come out very well, don't be too sad, don't be too depressed, just go back, try again, try with a clearer source, always try with good sources. Don't say, oh, I'm going to, for example, hang on, let's pull up an example of a terrible source here. Not from Kaiserreich itself, from one I've done. Yes, don't be like, I'm going to turn that into a picture. Because you need to, and then what you'll probably have is something that comes out like that and it's okay, but it's not amazing. If you're going to learn how to make like actually restored images like this using various AI software, I'm not going to teach that today, but don't start with that. Start with something that's clear, something that's high quality, just someone who's famous really, and go from there. And I hope that some of you at least found this vaguely useful and vaguely interesting. If you didn't, I'm sorry. This was by popular demand. I had a few people who wanted me to make a video making portraits, and you can see that, yeah, he's just sitting there in the frame. There's a good amount of space around the head. The head is in the centre. The head you want it to be in the centre, even if he's wearing a hat. And there's a reason why, actually I'll answer this before we go. The reason why Kaiserreich removes hats, why we've been doing portraits without hats, is because it makes it easier to frame it. With a hat, you can't see the top of the head. You can't see the hair. And you also have an instinct to want to include all the hat in the frame, which if it's like a small beret or something, that's fine. But if it's a big military cap, that's going to look very silly. You can frame around it, but it doesn't. Oh, that's the wrong button. If where's a one I've done fairly recently, it's framed around it, probably in, I want to say Czech pictures. No, not in there. Not a recent one, anyway. Here, yeah, this guy. You see, he's the hat's just completely off the frame, and that's how you want it. Just, it doesn't look right, but if it's going to match up with other pictures without a hat, that's how you have to do it. And that's why people don't like making portraits with hats. It's not because we want to remove hats because we find it funny, it's just because it's easier to make portraits without hats. They're more consistent. But at the same time, a big hat is pretty cool, so, you know, there's a balancing act. Anyway, hope you enjoyed. I probably will not make another video, like, ever again, but actually, who knows? I might do one trying to restore and make a source better, but that will be a lot more jump cutty because you have to go between various different apps. So here's Wonder Wilkie, and this was a tutorial of how to make a Kaiserreich style Hearts of Iron 4 portrait.